Okay, in this video, I'm going to take you through those 3 practice problems that I suggested you do at the end of class on Tuesday. So these are the end of chapter 8, questions 1, 2, and 3. And so we're just going to go through those together. So we're supposed to find our control chart limits, our upper and lower limits for both the X bar and the R charts for each of these problems. So let's start with question 1. So as I'm reading this one, my first thing I need to figure out is my sample size. And right here is where I'm looking. And don't get thrown up at this 30 samples, okay? That's just my warm-up period. That 30 is moot. It's the fact that each sample has 6 observations. That's going to be my sample size. So n is 6. And then in the problem it says that my grand mean, based on those samples, is 27.0 inches. So I'm going to just move that down here so I have the information available. And then my average range right here is 0.35 inches. Now, before I can do my control charts, I need to get my constants from my table. Remember, this is in our book on table 8.1, and I've gone ahead and done a screen capture here. So as I look at that control chart, this is based on my sample size, so I'd look here for 6, and I would see that A2 is 0.483, D3 is 0, D4 is 2.004. So I just make sure I get the right line for my sample size, and those are my control chart factors. So back over here, I'm just going to move those over. So again, A2 is 0.483, D3 is 0, and D4 is 2.004. Now that I have these pieces of information filled out, I can go ahead and just do the arithmetic for my control chart. So remember our formulas, and I had to type them out a little differently, so X bar is hard to type in Excel. So my control chart for X bar is my grand mean plus A2 times my average range, and then for the lower control limit, it's just minus A2 times the average range. So as I think about my numbers, that's going to be 27.0 plus 0.483, which is A2, times my average range, which is 0.35. And when I work that out, that comes to 27.169. My lower control limit for the X bar is going to be 27.0. Then I'm just going to go minus 0.483 times 0.35. And that works out to 26.831. So that would be my answer, my upper and lower control limits. My control chart goes from 26.831 to 27.169. Now for my range, that's going to go ahead and I'm going to have that be my average range, again 0.35, times D4, which is 2.004. And that works out to 0.701. And then my lower control limit is going to be, again, my average range 0.35 times D3 is 0, which is conveniently 0. So that would be my control limits for the range, 0 to 0.701. So that's problem 1. So let's go ahead and do problem 2. Problem 2, my sample size, those 25 observations, those 25 samples isn't what I'm worried about. It's the 10 observations each. So my n is going to be 10. My grand mean, 10.1. Average range, 0.4. So let me go ahead and move those down here. So n is 10. Grand mean, 10.1. Average range, 0.4. And then again, going back to my control chart table, I have a sample size of 10, and so here's where I get my control chart factors. A2 is 0.308, D3 0.223, D4 1.777. Again, that's just the table from your book, and that's how it'll be given to you on all exams or quizzes. So I'm going to move those over. 0.308, 0.223, 1.777. So we just have those together. And just like before, I'm now just going to fill in those numbers into my formulas so I can get my control charts. So for X bar, that's going to be my grand mean is 10.1 plus then A2 is 0.308 times my average range of 0.4, and that works out to 10.223. For my lower control limit, I'm just going to change this sign here. I'm going to subtract it, so 10.1 minus 0.308 times 0.4, and that's equal to 9.977. So that's my control chart for X bar, my limits. For my range, now I'm just going to go over here, and it's going to be my average range is 0.4 times D4, so that's going to be 1.777 to get my upper limit, which works out to 0.711. And for my lower control limit, that's going to be, again, my average range of 0.4 times my factor D3, which is 0.223. And that works out to 0.089. So that's question 2. Again, these are really straightforward as long as you know how to get the information from the problem. Okay, we're going to do that third problem real quickly. Now, I know this is a little hard to read, but again, you have this in your book. So now my 30 samples on the warm-up have 8 observations each. So N is 8. My grand mean is 0.503 pounds, so a little over half a pound, and the average range is 0.068. So that's my basic information there. So I'll go ahead and move that down for problem 3. So for problem 3, I've got N equals 8, grand mean of 0.503, average range of 0.068. And now I'm going to get my control chart factors. So using N of 8 over here, I've got 0.373 for A2, 0.136 for D3, and then 1.864. So again, I just look at that line for a sample size of 8. So I'm just going to move those over here. 0.373, 0.136, and then 1.864. Again, like before, we're just going to finish the arithmetic, very straightforward. So from an X bar chart, I start with my grand mean of 0.503. I add A2, 0.373, times my average range of 0.068. And that works out to 0.528. For my lower control limit, again, I start at 0.503. This time I subtract 0.373 times 0.068, which works out to 0.478. Okay, home stretch. So now we're going to just wrap it up with the range charts. So I have my average range of 0.068 times, for my upper control limit, I'm going to multiply that by D4. So that's 1.864. Which is 0.127. For my lower control limit, again 0.068 times D3, which is 0.136, which works out to 0.009. Okay, so again, in this case, for question 3, my control chart limits for the X bar chart go from 0.478 to 0.528, and then for the range from 0.009 to 0.127. I'll go ahead and post this document as well as the video, and hopefully the practice problems are very straightforward.